Welcome to Geek Gab on the Books. I'm Brian Niemeier, brianniemeier.com. Joining us today is a very special guest, author Jon Del Arroz. He's the author of the new For Steam and Country from Superversive Press, brand new steampunk adventure. And today we're going to be talking about the relative merits of traditional and indie publishing. But before we get into that, Jon, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Brian, thank you. It's good to be here with you.
How have you been? You've had a pretty eventful week.
I've had a pretty eventful month and a half. I mean, the For Steam and Country release was in June, so I was, hurriedly editing that up until the last minute there. And the release went swimmingly, which I'm excited about. And just got back from LibertyCon, which is a convention in Tennessee where it's pretty much Bain plus the best of the best of indie authors. I was telling you, you really need to head out there. I think you'd do well with that crowd. But just super fun weekend. Sold out of books at the con, and was part of a launch for an anthology called A Fistful of Credits, which is out from Mark Wandry and Chris Kennedy, which I wrote a short story for.
Oh, excellent. Congratulations. And yeah, just a note to the listeners at home, you can find For Steam and Country in the show notes below. But also, thanks for reminding me, Jon, I'll have to add A Fistful of Credits. I did see that and it looks excellent. Can you tell us a bit about the kinds of stories you'll find in there?
Yeah, I'll plug Mark's book because I read it. Mark's book was called Cartwright's Cavaliers, and it's basically a mercenaries with mechs in space. And it's action-packed. It is everything the pulp revolution and indie likes out of science fiction. And so I'm very happy to be a part of that world. Chris Kennedy's also got his own book in that world, and I can't remember the title at the moment, which is I've got very soon in my to-read queue. They got 14 authors, including themselves, me, Brad Torgerson's in it, Jason Cordova's in it, and a bunch of other awesome people. So it's doing really well also.
Outstanding. Did you get a chance to run into Brad at the con? Was he there?
Brad didn't make it, which I knew of in advance, and I'm sad about that. But I know he does attend that con sometimes.
Okay. Well, now, Brad, if you're listening, you are missed. I hope to catch you next time.
Yeah.
So, indie publishing versus trad publishing. This is a first for On the Books because it's the first time that the guest has chosen the topic to be discussed based on a Twitter poll. And there were a number of fine, intriguing topics, all great conversation starters, but you, the listeners, chose this one. So clearly there is an abiding interest among the public in the question of, should authors go and self-publish? Should you sign with a traditional publisher? And I think it would be helpful to define the terms because I've seen them get a little fuzzy. I've seen certain authors who self-publish almost everything and then sell a short story and say, well, I'm a hybrid author. Or I see some publishers claim, well, we're an independent publisher, which I think of as an oxymoron. But how do you define indie and how do you define trad publishing?
Yeah, I would limit trad publishing pretty well. I mean, when I think of trad publishing, I think of a Del Rey or a Random House or a Tor. Or Bain. Bain used to be kind of the alternative within that sort of frame, but they are the establishment of military science fiction at this point. So it's a big company with distribution that you'll find in a Barnes and Noble, if you still have a Barnes and Noble near you, that have their processes, that have their slush piles, that have their very standard advances and rates that you can probably, if you're in sci-fi like we are, you can look them up on the SIFWA site and find out exactly what you can expect. And that's pretty much how I define it. I limited scope to that. I think there are indie publishers that are bigger than others and are more established than others, but they seem to have a more indie mindset in the way that they handle their releases. And I think Castalia House is the one that we can point to the easiest in that. I mean, if you look at the way they time their releases versus the way traditional times their releases, the weight lag is something that's very different. And I think That's going to be a hallmark of the discussion here.
All right, thanks. Yeah. See, and it's going to be an interesting discussion because you and I are working from different definitions. Mine's a bit simpler. I define independent publishing as an author self-publishing independently of anyone else. And I
Okay.
define TradPub as a publisher of any kind.
Of any kind, huh?
Yeah, like
Interesting.
well, because the only two, from my perspective, there are only two parties who are absolutely necessary to the author and reader relationship. I'll let you figure out what those two are.
Yeah.
Out of that set. So anytime you're introducing, I mean, honestly, a publisher is always going to be a middleman.
Correct.
Okay. Now, that's not necessarily bad. That is a negative connotation. There are many, I mean, countless authors who've been very well served by taking on the services of a publisher, because not everyone can excel at every skill that's necessary to succeed in publishing.
Or pay for it, for that matter. That's the other flip side, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Although, to flip it over again, really, since publishers operate on a percentage basis, they take usually the lion's share of the royalties. In the long run, it will be far more expensive for most authors. You know, you'll end up paying your publisher far more for like proofreading and editing and marketing than if you just done it all on your own.
Yeah, I can agree with that to some extent. Yeah, what a publisher offers these days is an editor, a book cover, probably a couple people to help with proofreading it, and then posting something up on Amazon and other sites in order to get you know, that's the product placement, right? Product placement. So
right.
And they handle the accounting and all that, which is both good and bad. I mean, as that last part, if you're doing it yourself, obviously you can get your checks whenever Amazon sends your checks, versus waiting for whatever deal you have for whatever royalty statement basis it is through a publisher. That's one of the reasons to, I guess, avoid it, maybe, if you're looking for a certain monthly income or whatnot. But you can negotiate that with a lot of small publishers as well, so it does end up a little bit moot.
Well said. Yeah. Again, it really depends on what your situation is. The main, really what it comes down to is a question that was posed by formerly best-selling TradPub author, now indie author, Barry Eisler, who said, okay, look at the TradPub contract that they've given you, and then look at publishing on Amazon. Just ask yourself, okay, at the 70% royalty rate, right, getting paid every month, how long will it take me to beat the contract?
Right. And that's a great question. And that it varies from person to person. So, you know, if you're doing very successfully on the indie side, obviously you'll be able to beat that very quickly. If you're really an upstart, you might not. And I see a lot of people not really ever get to a point where they can really monetarily benefit from either doing it themselves or working with a publisher.
Right.
So in those instances, I mean, they almost operate as vanity things for a bit, because really the difference, and it doesn't matter, and I'm harping on this point, and I know you are too, your quality is not stated at all by sales, awards, anything like that. Your quality is your quality, and it's really your marketing that makes the difference in who sees it or not. So that, I think that's the big reason a lot of people want to go to publishers, or especially the big houses, because they believe that the big houses will spend some money and time on marketing them. And from what I understand from most new authors and most kind of lower end mid-list authors, that's absolutely false. You won't get anything from them. Is that your experience with most people as well, Brian?
Sorry, what aspect in particular? I was
getting help with marketing through from publishers, even the big name publishers. Say you're getting hired by Tor Books tomorrow, as a brand new first time author. What would you a lot of people, I think, would expect a lot of marketing from them. I think at most what you'll get is a review from Kirkus Reviews or Publishers Weekly, and then a couple paid reviewers, and then you'll be left to the wind.
Those are kinds I've heard. Now, I will say that while I am a hybrid author, I have been both traditionally and indie published. I haven't been published by one of the big five. So
Right.
I can't speak from personal experience, but from many, many firsthand accounts of former and current Trad Pub authors, basically, if you're on the back list or the mid list, then you'll be lucky to really get anything. If it's your first time, you'll be lucky to get a small book tour that they pay for, reimburse you for. Bookstore co-op, that's the pyramid of your books right inside the door of Barnes & Noble with a cardboard cutout of you right next to it. Publishers have to pay Barnes & Noble for that. You're not going to get that unless you're one of their darlings. But here's the thing.
Extremely rare.
Yeah, here's the thing. I'm just going to cut to the chase. The one advantage, the only one that big five traditional publishers have over indie is they have a monopoly on the paper book distribution channels.
Correct.
From the printer to the bookstore, and that is dying.
It is, and that's where I've had the hang up. I've still, despite all of this, and despite my negativity on the industry, I was talking to Brian before the show that I still really am clinging to that desire to want to be in that, and the reason is because I want to see myself in the Barnes and Noble, and that's an irrational thing because it does not necessarily mean I'm going to sell better. And it doesn't actually mean that many Barnes and Nobles will be picking them up because it all depends on their own internal booksellers. A lot of people tracks and you can go look for their books that just came out a month or two ago, and you won't find them in the store without having to order them anyway. So yeah, that it is a cool thing. Obviously, that is a great vanity thing, and if it does take off in that circuit, you obviously get a leg up over everybody else. But again, I think that is the exception, not the rule, even with newer big five authors.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really when, for example, I do editing, I do freelance editing. And the first question that I ask my clients is, okay, why are you writing? Why are you publishing? What's your goal here? Because that will affect how I approach the text as an editor, because I also give marketing assistance. And yeah, you're not alone. There are some of them who say, yeah, you know what? I just want a book with my name on it. I want to be able to show my relatives. I want bragging rights. I want validation. And that's valid. That's very common among writers. People like me, I just want to get paid. Like, I'm gonna be honest. I want to reach readers, but I want to make a living doing this. I want to do business as intelligently as I can. And yeah, I don't need the validation. I don't really care if one of my books ever appears in a Barnes and Noble. So yeah, I'll take the 70% royalties. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think on my thought process, I'm in between there. I still kind of get the joy from the whole thing, and like having that validation. But I think I'm inching more towards, okay, I want money now. And I think that comes with just producing more books. And I think that's another benefit of indie publishing is you can just spit stuff out as fast as you can possibly write. And if you can move at that speed, that's where you start to really do some good things. And I think Nick Cole really has been saying it a lot. And whenever I ask him for advice, he always tells me, come out with something every month. And I look at that and I go, whoa, that's not possible. But it really depends. I mean, if you shorten your text a little bit, if you really dedicate yourself towards writing, it is doable, and there are benefits towards that speed. In the internet era, the more content you produce faster, the more likely people are to make a habit of your stuff and keep consuming your stuff.
Yeah, I have found that, I just did a new release. I just released a standalone novella, Hymn of the Pearl. And yeah, few things bump up my sales more than release. I suppose the book bomb did. But other than like an endorsement from someone major, someone much, much higher up the chain than you, Yeah, I mean, fans love something new. They love a release, and yeah, personally, I couldn't imagine being able to write fast enough to release something on a monthly basis. And really, it's a bit deceptive because it's not so much about speed. I've heard it's just about how long your butt is in the chair and your hands are on the keyboard.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so it can be done. The old pulp masters did it. They put a ream of butcher paper into the typewriter and just went and just cut off when they were done and kept going.
And yeah, that's definitely what I think the indie trail is trying to model itself after these days.
Oh, totally. Guys like Dean Wesley Smith have said, indie's the new pulp.
Yep.
And that seems to be true in terms of story content as well as in business model. So,
but on the speed side, in traditional publishing, I mean, you can get bogged down, and this is where I mean, my dream has always been to go to Baen Books and be in their little stable, because I grew up reading Elizabeth Moon and Jody Lynn Nye and Lois McMaster Bujold, David Weber, etc. And so I wanted to be among them, and I wanted to see my books among them. Now, as I've gone over the years here, I've seen my friends who are actually, have ins with the company, have some established record to themselves, and I've seen multiple people submit works to them, and no matter who they are and what their promise is and where they're at, they go directly to their slush pile still, just because that's the process that they have to have, because Baen has limited capacity. And if you go up the chain to other publishers, which are bigger, I mean, they actually have even more limited capacity. So I've seen people sit in these slush piles for 2+ years with their books. And, at the speed of the internet, if I slowed down and just took a book out of my process right now and just left it in that slush pile, and just left it there for 2 years, I would eat up probably the last 6 months of my time, which is going to delay my next release, which actually might hurt my career more than it would help it at this point.
Right, exactly. And that's another aspect of beating the contract, which is you got to factor, okay, I have this book. I could release it tomorrow on KDP and it will start earning for me, as opposed to it's going to be in the slush pile for 6 to 18 months. And then even if it gets accepted, there'll be another 6 to 18 months before it hits shelves. So just the head start in terms of time and the velocity with which indie lets you publish as quickly as you want and be as flexible as you want. Yeah, it's a major advantage. It's probably one of the reasons why indie authors, just as a group, simply are out earning trad pub authors right now.
Yeah, and that's pretty amazing. Come to think about it, because if you go back 10 years, an indie author is a person who just bought a publishing deal and had it self-published as a vanity deal, and there was not a scene like this. There were not a group of authors that you could buy, and there was not a group of authors who certainly weren't making a living off of it at that time. It's a relatively new concept, and it's pretty exciting because of that.
Absolutely.
So I think we're in agreement on the topic as a whole, which is really indie's the only way to go. But we're biased, obviously.
Survivorship bias.
So
I would like to address. Sorry, didn't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
Go ahead. All you.
Well, there's I think a good issue someone brought up in the chat that I'd like your opinion on. Bryce Beatty, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, points out that okay, let's say you get a $2,000 advance from a trad publisher. To beat that, you'd have to sell 1,000 copies of your book at $2.99 on Amazon, and that's a lot of work. How would you respond to that?
Oh, it's a ton of work. I probably spend 3+ hours a day marketing. If you see me on social media, I'm just beating the drum over and over and over again, and I do that in multiple ways. I definitely don't advocate just posting your book link over and over and over again, or you'll lose all your followers. But it is engaging with followers and just giving them content like blogs and things like that. And it is super time consuming and it's awful. But here's the thing. On your first one, it will take a ton of work to do that. On your second one, you'll get there much faster. And not only that, but your second one will generate clicks for your first one, which will sell you even more. And as you go down the line, I was talking with Michael J. Sullivan. He's probably one of the most successful indie authors of all time, and now has gone to traditional because he's so successful they bought him out basically. But he said, it's really the three. Once you have the third book that's where you can start to take off and really making a living at it, because there's just something magical with 3 where it just exponentially increases your sales like that. So yes, there's a ton of marketing work involved, but you're going to have to do that if you're a traditional publisher anyway. If you want to out earn your advance then you really have to be out there just putting yourself full guns forward all the time. And if you're not, you won't out earn your advance, and you won't get another contract with them anyway. So it'll be moot.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Also, I would remind the listeners that advance is a loan. Now, it's a loan at 0% interest that if you don't earn it out, you don't have to pay it back usually. But for 50% of TradPub authors, that advance is all they get. And the average first-time book advance now is something like $3,000 to $3,500. Okay.
Yeah, that's not going to change your life, right?
No, and there's a 50% chance that is all you'll get. And if your first book fails to earn out, there are 1,000 more where you came from. Chances are they will cut you and you will not get another chance, and you're done unless you change your name and start all over at the slush pile.
Right.
If you look at it in terms of a long time horizon, so okay, I publish with TradPub, I get $3,500. It doesn't earn out. That's all I see from it. Because even if you're TradPub, you have to market yourself just as much as an indie author. I mean, there's no way around that.
You can get advances even from smaller presses. I mean, I did for my first book. I mean, it was a small advance, but I got one. And so that it's doable. So I mean, yeah, I mean, getting that $3,000 range is probably not going to happen with a small press unless you're a name who they know and they're trying to court you for whatever reasons for their marketing purposes. But I mean, just because of the weight involved, I mean, if you do an opportunity cost sort of financial model of that, so you get a $3,000 advance, but you had to wait 2-3 years in a slush pile and edits and further timing in order to get that for your one shot, right? Versus you've released, I mean, 2 to 3 books a year in that time, you'll earn that, you'll make that money way faster, even just being a bad marketing indie author, I think.
Well, and plus, the internet is forever, right? TradPub books, like on average, they're going to be on the shelf at Barnes & Noble for a couple of months, and then they're gone because they've limited shelf space.
Right.
With KDP, your book is on there forever, so it is earning forever, and it is eventually, and unless you do no marketing, like it'll keep earning after you're dead for your survivors, right? It will beat that contract. It's going to beat that $3,500, even if it takes years. Yeah,
I agree with that. So I just don't see the benefit, and it's because of the slowness. With the internet, there's just no reason for any industry to act that slow.
Well said. It's what I call analog thinking.
Yep. Cool.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, we're a bit over time. We had quite an animated and lively discussion here. Before we go,
we're passionate.
We are, absolutely. Us Latins. So, I'm like a quarter Italian.
Hey.
Yeah. But before we go, you have some books out. Would you like another chance to tell folks to just join us about them?
Yeah, absolutely. My first book is Star Realms Rescue Run, and I've got a nice dearth of support for the Dragon Award for Best Military Science Fiction, which is not to step on Brian's toes for the Secret King for Best Science Fiction. You can vote for us both, which is the best part. So
be in the show notes, folks.
Please go and put that nomination in. If we get on there, that does so much for indie publishing and just does a ton for us. That's out and available and has great reviews on it. It's I like to call it Rogue One but better. And
so do I.
And then for Steam and Country just came out, and it is my redefinition of the steampunk genre as fun action adventure. So if you are interested in steampunk, I want this to be your archetypal steampunk that you turn to, and I think it will be once you finish reading it. So those are my 2 books out now.
Well, that is a high aspiration, but I believe in you. So what do you folks think? Get Stephen Country. Check it out. Link will be below. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to double secret subscribe. Because once you click subscribe, YouTube makes you click the little bell icon, or you won't get the notifications of new shows. So this has been Geek Gab on the Books. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. I'd like to thank our special guest, author Jon Del Arroz. You can check out his work and his writings at, John, what's your blog URL?
It's delarose.com, and I know that's impossible to spell, but you are looking at the show, so maybe you can. But if you're not, DELARROZ.com.
You can find me at brianniemeier.com. I'm not even going to try. It's in the show notes. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. And remember to keep reading.